There is a question that has followed the Genesis flood account for centuries, asked by skeptics and believers alike. If Noah's flood was real, it was either the most important geological event in human history, or it was a local river overflow in ancient Mesopotamia that a frightened family mistook for the end of the world. It cannot be both. And the difference matters enormously, because a local flood leaves local evidence, while a global flood leaves a global fingerprint pressed into every rock formation on every continent on Earth. So which is it? The answer, according to creation geologists working with data from thousands of drill cores, ocean surveys, and field studies across 6 continents, is written plainly in the rock record. Not in theory, not in interpretation alone, in the physical layers of sedimentary rock beneath your feet, wherever on Earth you happen to be standing. And once you have seen it, it is very difficult to unsee. Begin with a single, remarkable geological fact. 6 enormous sedimentary rock packages, called megasequences, blanket the entire North American continent. Geologist Dr. Timothy Clarey of the Institute for Creation Research spent years mapping over 3,000 stratigraphic columns across North America, South America, Africa, Europe, and Asia. What he found was the same 6 packages, the same sequences, the same formations, appearing on every continent simultaneously. These are not small local deposits. The first megasequence alone, the Sauk, is represented at the base of the Grand Canyon by a formation called the Tapeats Sandstone. It contains enormous boulders deposited by rapidly moving water, and it extends continuously and uniformly across North America. The same formation, in identically positioned rock columns, occurs in Scotland, China, and Australia. Slow, tranquil rivers cannot deposit uniform rock blankets across entire hemispheres at once. Only one mechanism can. The laminar flow of continent-wide tsunami surges moves billions of tons of sediment-laden water across flat continental surfaces in rapid successive pulses. Then there is the great unconformity. At the base of the Grand Canyon, the sedimentary layers sit directly on ancient basement rock that has been sheared perfectly flat, as though an enormous blade had passed across the entire continent. This sheared surface is visible in the canyon, identifiable in Scotland, traceable in China, and measurable in Australia. The same event was recorded simultaneously in the foundation rock of multiple continents. Slow, gradual processes cannot shear an entire continent flat. Only the catastrophic, high-energy inundation of a global flood can. The fossil record adds a second line of evidence that is harder still to explain away. Geologist Harold Clark proposed what creation scientists call ecological zonation. The geologic column, in this reading, is not a timeline of life evolving over 500 million years. It is a vertical map of a rising flood burying contiguous environments one by one as the waters climbed. The lowest strata are filled overwhelmingly with marine invertebrates, shellfish, trilobites, creatures of the ocean floor, the first environments overwhelmed when the ocean floor itself fractured. Moving upward, coastal and lowland creatures appear, reptiles, dinosaurs, and lowland forests buried as the tsunamis pushed inland. Higher still, the mobile upland mammals, creatures that fled to higher ground and were buried last when even the mountains were submerged. This is not the order you would expect from a random burial. It is precisely the order you would expect from a single rising catastrophic flood, overwhelming ecological zones from the bottom up. Across every continent, paleontologists have documented vast fossil graveyards where billions of creatures, marine and terrestrial, are found violently mixed and catastrophically buried together, perfectly preserved, with no sign of slow decomposition. Rapid burial on a planetary scale. The flood's fingerprint, pressed into the world's bone record. One of the most striking single pieces of physical evidence is the polystrate fossil. A tree trunk, standing upright, penetrating through multiple distinct rock layers that uniformitarian geology claims were deposited over thousands of years. You can see it with your own eyes. A single tree, cutting vertically across strata that supposedly represent millions of years of slow, gradual time. A dead tree cannot stand exposed for thousands of years, waiting for rock to accumulate around it slowly. It would rot and disappear long before the second layer was laid down. The only explanation that fits the physical reality is that every one of those layers was deposited rapidly, completely, and all at once, burying that tree from root to crown in a single catastrophic event. The polystrate fossil does not whisper its evidence. It shouts it. Now the second question. If the flood was global, and if all land animal life descended from the pairs preserved on the Ark, which came to rest on the mountains of Ararat in the ancient Near East, how did a kangaroo travel from Turkey to Australia? It is a fair question, and it has a compelling answer. Creation biologists begin with a crucial distinction. God did not send every modern species onto the Arkansas. He sent representatives of broader created kinds. The Hebrew word is min, what modern taxonomy would roughly call a biological family. The rigorous study of these boundaries is called Baraminology. A single ancestral canine kind produced, in the centuries after the flood, wolves, coyotes, dingoes, and domestic dogs through the rapid expression of pre-existing genetic diversity. An ancestral marsupial kind similarly diversified into the many species we classify today. Researchers estimate that only 1,400 to 2,000 broad kinds of land animals were required to board the Arkansas. A vessel of the Ark's dimensions, approximately 450 feet long, had more than sufficient capacity. After the flood, as the surviving kinds descended from Ararat and began to multiply, two extraordinary mechanisms opened the world to them. First, the post-flood ice age. As creation meteorologists have modeled, the warm post-flood oceans and ash-laden sky created the thermodynamic conditions for a rapid, single ice age lasting approximately 700 years. This ice age locked enormous volumes of water in polar ice sheets, dropping global sea levels by more than 300 feet. Continental shelves that are now submerged became dry land. Intercontinental land bridges appeared, wide enough for entire migrating populations to cross on foot over multiple generations. Second, vegetation rafting. The global flood uprooted and carried trillions of trees. Post-flood oceans were filled with enormous interwoven mats of floating timber and vegetation, some the size of small islands. Animals trapped on these mats were carried by post-flood ocean currents across vast distances, washing ashore on distant continents and islands. This mechanism, called oceanic dispersal, is accepted by mainstream biologists as an explanation for island biogeography. The Genesis model operates on a far larger, catastrophic scale. The fast-reproducing marsupials crossed the exposed land bridges quickly, reaching the Australian continent before the Ice Age ended and sea levels rose again, closing the routes behind them. The kangaroo did not need a miracle to reach Australia. It needed a land bridge, a few centuries, and the biological instinct to keep moving. The same rocks that tell geologists the Earth is ancient tell creation scientists something different entirely. Not a different set of rocks, the same ones. The argument is not about the evidence. It is about the clock. Slow processes and a long clock yield a single reading. Catastrophic processes and a short clock produce another. And when you map the megasequences, read the unconformities, study the fossil graveyards, trace the polystrate trees, and follow the migration routes, the catastrophic reading answers questions the slow clock cannot. The flood was global. The rocks of 6 continents say so. The fossils buried within them say so. The genome of every creature on Earth says so. And a kangaroo in Australia says so, whether it knows it or not. In our next episode, we open the Table of Nations in Genesis chapter 10 and trace the 5 sons of Shem to the civilizations they founded, following the ancient world as it took shape from a single family.